Poveglia, Italy's island of the damned. A little over 200 years ago, there was an island off the coast of Italy called Poveglia. This island was like any other until a deadly disease swept through the nearby city of Venice. The sick were rounded up and sent to the island for quarantine. But when the disease got out of hand, the entire island was shut down and nobody was allowed in or out. Then something even worse happened. Rumors started to spread about the island. People said they saw ghosts wandering around the shores at night and that they heard screams coming from inside the abandoned town. There are some places in the world that we should never go, and this is one of them. Let's take a look at the forbidden island of Poveglia. The island of Poveglia lies just off the coast of Venice. It's just 7 square kilometers or 2.7 square miles in size and has a population of 0. That's right, there are no people living on this island today. Not a single person. What makes this place so scary is that it used to be a bustling community with its own church, public buildings and farmlands, and then it was transformed into one of Italy's most horrifying prison colonies for the insane. In the 18th century, Venice was struck by a deadly disease. We don't know exactly what it was. Some say it was the bubonic plague, and others claim it was yellow fever. But whatever it was very bad. So bad, in fact, that the Venetian government took drastic measures to try and stop it. They basically did the same thing they did during the real plague. They locked everyone who had come into contact with an infected person on the island of Poveglia, hoping the disease would run its course and die out. But if you're going to lock people up on an island, you need to make sure you feed them. Otherwise, things are going to get ugly fast. And this is exactly what happened. When food began to run low, prisoners escaped and swam back to Venice, only to find that they had brought the disease with them. Within weeks, Venice was under lockdown. The entire city was quarantined, and no one was allowed in or out. As time went on, the island became less of a quarantine zone and more of a prison colony for the mentally ill. On June 12, 1809, the island was officially given over to the insane and malarial patients. Over the next few years, thousands of Italian men and women were sent here, locked away in a building on the island where they slowly lost their minds. They were left in filthy conditions without proper food or medical care. The death rate was incredible, with some sources saying that up to 1,000 people died every year from disease and starvation. By 1876, the island had become too much of a headache. Prisoners kept escaping and bringing the disease back to Venice. Also, taking care of the asylum was expensive. The Venetian government gave the island to the military and turned it into a fort. For a while, everything seemed to be going well. The insane weren't roaming around Venice anymore, and the fort was self-sufficient thanks to the labor of the prisoners. But this didn't last long. Between 1910 and 1922, another epidemic broke out. Nobody knows what disease this was, but it seems to have been yet another highly contagious and deadly illness. As soon as it hit the island, the soldiers stationed there, along with the prisoners, were quarantined. This time, though, the government wasn't going to make the same mistake they had before. No one was allowed on or off the island. The soldiers were trapped there with the inmates, and they all slowly died. It's said that after the epidemic was over, the bodies of the dead were burned on the island. All that was left of them was their bones. Those bones were then ground up and turned into fertilizer, which was used on the island's farms. You can imagine how messed up that must have been for anyone who came across those bones and didn't know what they were. When the plague was finally over, the island was still considered dangerous. The buildings were torn down and the land was disinfected. But people were still afraid to go near the island. Even today, people are afraid of what might be lurking in the shallow waters around the island. There are rumors of a massive graveyard underneath the sea, where hundreds of bodies were dumped after the epidemics. There was one more use for the island. In World War II, Germany occupied northern Italy. They made the island into a prisoner of war camp, where they tortured and executed anyone who was caught spying for the Allies. After the war was over, the island was abandoned again. The Italian government tried to turn it into a resort, but the locals protested because they were afraid of the ghosts that haunted the island. To this day, it remains abandoned and off-limits to humans. But there are plenty of people who claim to have seen ghosts on this island, as well as creepy figures hiding in the shadows. Locals will tell you that the island is haunted by the prisoners and victims of the plagues. Sometimes you can hear screaming and moaning coming from inside the abandoned buildings. If you listen closely, you might hear chains dragging and eerie moans. Some believe these are the sounds of former prisoners moving around in their sleep. Only now they are ghosts. Many fishermen stay away from the island because they don't want to anger the ghosts that live there. One fisherman told the Daily Mail, "I won't go anywhere near the island. I hear chains dragging. I don't know what's there, but I'm scared." Another fisherman added, "I was out on my boat once when suddenly the engine cut out. I looked around and realized that I was alone. My crew had vanished. I called out for them, but there was no reply. Then I saw them on the shore of Poveglia Island. They had taken off running and they were screaming, 'Don't follow us!' I wanted to go after them, but I couldn't move. I felt this strong force pushing me back onto the water. I struggled, but it was pointless. It was like trying to swim against the tide. Eventually, I let myself drift away and woke up in the morning with a vivid memory of what had happened. When I told the others about it, they said I'd been babbling in my sleep, but I know what I saw. There's something evil on that island." Is it possible that a small island could be cursed? Maybe. There are definitely some things about this place that we don't understand. Like, why did the soldiers refuse to leave? Why did the boats break down? And why did the fishermen see ghostly apparitions on the shore? Perhaps there is something on this island that science can't explain. Maybe it's just a good thing we don't know. Thanks for watching. Which forbidden island would you like to visit? Let me know in the comments below, and remember to subscribe if you haven't already. See you next time. Bye.